Aloha, I was asked to make a video recording of the in-class activity that we did, and so that's what I'm doing here. Let's see, make sure I'm sharing the right thing. Oh, I think I was. Yeah, okay. Now I'm sharing the screen. The first question is, Excel can hold any number of worksheets, and each worksheet is made up of more than lots and lots of cells. What can a cell hold? The four things a cell can hold. One is can hold numeric data, any number you want to put in there, a bunch of text, which are non-numbers, those are letters. Right? You can put a formula. A formula is used to either manipulate numbers or manipulate text. Or you can put an error message, which means you can put all your problems in Excel. Right? That's not what it means. But anyways, those are the four things that cells can hold. Let's look at the next question. If you buy a home for $575,000, you put 20% down over 30 years, interest rate is 70%. Well, 7%. What will your mortgage be? Let's put this in here. I have some cells. They look like table 2-1 or whatever that is, that show something with where you can see. But I'm going to make this a little larger. You can see, make this wider. Purchase amount, $575,000. And so I'm going to put $575. You want to put that in there. You put a down payment percent, 20%. The loan amount. Well, the loan amount is going to be the purchase amount, I guess in the parentheses, times 1 minus that. And really, I can tick off that. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can keep it in there. You can add extra parentheses if you want. So basically, the purchase amount minus the down payment. So 100% minus 20%, 80%. And if you write it as a formula, if you're looking at homes, sometimes one home might be $575,000. If that's within your range, another home might be $600,000. Another will be $500,000, which means you can vary your down payment a little bit. So, for example, all of a sudden you realize, maybe we can afford $25,000 down, or maybe we can only afford $18,000, or whatever it is. But this one just has 20%. Let's put that in there. 360 months. So if you were to get, let's say, I'll do a 30-year mortgage, there's 12 months every year. I put 30 times 12. You can put 360, however you want to do it. If you have a 30-year note, you've got that many. And the mortgage we put on here is 7%. What's the payment going to be? We'll use a formula called payment. And when you start to put in a formula, you'll notice we have a bunch of things show up. So I start to put in the formula, and what happens if you do a formula that's in there, you'll see other things. If you look below, it says rate, N per, PV, future value. If I want to know what rate is, I can click on that, and Excel will pop up some information about what the rate is. But I know, let's see, it's that. And because we're compounding monthly, I'll divide it by 12. If you had quarterly payments, you divide it by 4. If you have annual payments, you can divide it by 1 or not do anything with it. We're doing this monthly, so you divide that by 12. Number of payments, 360. And the payment, you negative 460, because that's how much you owe. If you owe something, that's negative. Hit enter. And that means your monthly payment is going to be $3,060.39. When I did this in class, one of your brilliant classmates thought, okay, if I make minimum payment every month, how much am I paying? And so he actually did this. And I thought, pretty cool. It's worth doing. If this is the payment you're making, 360 times, if all you do is make minimum payment, that means you're paying over $1.1 million. So that $460,000 loan you borrowed is now over $1 million. And this is interesting. What happens if you find a better mortgage broker and you can get 6% instead of 7%, instead of 1.1 million, you're looking at 992,000. Anyways, so you can play around with it to help you see what you want. Okay, that's the loan calculator. Let's look at formulas. And there's a couple problems on here. The results are in column D. If you look in column D, you'll see a bunch of these hashtags. And that's not a social media thing. That means there's a problem. And so we need to fix that. If all you see is hashtags, most of the time that means your column is a little bit too narrow. If you move your mouse up, I'm going to move mine up to between D and E. I've got that bar with the two little arrows on each side. If I click on that, I can widen it and it'll make it wider. Oh, and there's a problem, value. Another little trick you can do, you can select a bunch of cells. I'll select these. And if I double click any one of those in between, it will resize to the width of the widest cell contents. That's a couple things you can do. So if I look at this formula, it's A2 plus C2. We're adding these two cells, but it doesn't work very well because it has this error message because something is wrong. 4,000, that's a string. It can't add a string very well. Let's turn that into a number. I'll put 4,000 into it. Now we got the result of 12,000. So 8,000 plus 4,000 is 12,000. Next one, I added a comment because November 27th, 1919 is actually a special date. That's when the EA temple was dedicated. What date are we looking at 36 months later? That's what this formula tells us. It's got a bunch, all these values in here, year, month, day. But the formula is already written. We want to turn that into a number, and that will give us, can't see that. That will give us 3 years later from that exact same date. But if you're looking at adding months, you want to do something like that because we have these funny things like leap years or whatever. I think leap year might fall in there. Whether or not it does, not every single year has the same number of days. So you can't just add the number of days unless you know what year you start, but you could just use a date formula. You don't have to worry about that. Okay, so there we have the two formula things we fixed. Let's look at text a little bit. I added a poem I really like. It's called Footprints in the Sand. There's a book I really enjoy reading called The Hobbit. And the text in here take up a lot of space. This is really messy. This is not something that I would just put in the publication or put something for other people to use. You can't read this. If you look at the footprints, it says one night and what else is going on? You can't read that. If you look in the formula bar, which is right up here, annotate, there we go. You look in the formula bar, you can see something in here, and that's easier to read. And I made mine a little bit wider. And so if you wanted to do that, if you grab on the bottom of the formula bar till you have an up and down arrow, you can make it taller or you can make it shorter. The default is to have one row. Sometimes my formulas are a little bit big, so I might make it wider. Unless I'm trying to make the screen narrow, I can adjust that. Anyway, that's how you fix that. You want to read that a little bit better. And like this is kind of, if you're reading, I wouldn't recommend reading a book out of Excel. You can do a lot of things with Excel. Maybe a better way to read a book. But if this is where you have the information, maybe you want to, it'll work, I guess, if you have it. You can move those around, but pay attention when you're inputting data that it displays the way you intend. There's so many times when I think, okay, this will look great, and I put it in here, and then I actually look at it. It's not that beautiful. There's this, what's in the cell has a carriage return, so is only the row is only this wide. It stops right about here, and then it goes down to the next one. Ends of worms and oozy smell, but if you read how it's displayed, it keeps going on and on and on. And in fact, where that return that you put in is not even a space, doesn't even show up. It's not even acknowledged here. And it just goes on, and it's hard to read. So you probably want to make sure you don't display data like that, unless you're trying to confuse somebody. If you are, they'll do a great job of confusing them. There's a couple things to think about with data. Let's look at some data entry. For these, I have, make sure, okay. Let's look at this check number format. So if you look at each one of these cells up here in where it says general because it's not formatted, or that's one way you can do it. The other way, if you right click and go down to format cells, it will say general because it's not formatted. But once you start putting things in, Excel will format things for you. And what can be really frustrating is if you try to put in something in there, a number, and it thinks it's a date, and it keeps the format as a date, and you're trying to put in a number, and that can be frustrating. Then all you do is you format the cell. Let's look at what happens though. But so Excel's trying to guess what kind of a format you want, and it tries to help you, and usually it's very helpful most of the time. So I'm going to put, oh, I don't want dollar. That's the next one. I'm going to put something with a comma. So 35,223. If your Excel is configured to have a decimal instead of a comma, make sure you put it in properly. But if I do that, what happens to up here? You'll notice now it says number. Before it said general, but now it knows that it's a number because I entered a number with if I put a comma in there, it recognizes it's a number. This says general. If I put in the dollar amount, $5.25 or whatever dollar amount. Now when I go back to that cell, it says currency. Now it recognizes that I was hoping to put currencies in there. If I put text in there, I'll put word. What's the word? Yeah, it's still general. It didn't really do anything to it. Just kept it like this. If I add number as a text, I put a little apostrophe and then the number, and it's still general, but it gives me a warning. If I click on the warning, it says number stored as text. It wants to know if I want to convert that to a number or ignore it. But anyway, and you also notice it's all the way over to the left. If it's a number, numbers generally go over to the right. Text is over to the left. So if you're looking at a cell really quick, why isn't that number being added in there? Oh, that's a text field, even though it's a 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever it is. If it's text, it'll treat it as a text. Let's put a date. I'm going to put September 5th, 2023. I typed it out, and that works. It recognizes it as a date. What happens if I put 5? It will treat it like a date. If I put in 1,000 or whatever, it still treats it like a date. So maybe, anyways, now, oh, it says custom, but it will treat it as a date until I reformat it, which I can do. See, right click, format cells, and oh, this is hiding from me. Wait, show you, anyways. Or I can come up here, short date or long date, or whatever. I can reformat it to something else. But anyways, that's so some data entry will automatically format for you, some won't. Good to know which one is which. You get a bunch of practice, you'll get that down pat. Let's look at clearing things. To do that, make sure you're at the home ribbon. Once you're in the home ribbon, come over here to where it says clear. This is pretty useful. I'm going to go to this first one, clear all data. I've got this weird, funky format. I don't even know what that says. Maybe it means something. Hopefully it's not a swear word in another language. I just put in some random characters in there. And I formatted yellow, highlight yellow cell, red text, line through it. If I do clear all, that's the very first one, everything goes away. The contents, the formats, nothing's there anymore. We go to the next one, clear. I'll just clear just the formats. You still have the value of the cell, but it doesn't have the McDonald's look with the bar through it. It's just a regular plain vanilla one that we had before. I'll do clear contents. That's the third clear option. Now you'll notice it's yellow because that formatting is still there. I'll put warg. And so whatever value I put in there, it'll keep that format, but I cleared out the value of the cell, even though the formats were still there. I added a comment on here. This is a comment. That's not too exciting. But if you're working on an Excel product with your coworkers, and you might put comments in there, things you might want to consider or whatever, and you can reply to comments and have some sort of discussion. But by the time you get it sent out to your client, you want to clear all the comments. So you can clear a comment and note. So you select all the cells that might have those, click on clear comments and notes, and then they'll go away. In cell B14, I've got a hyperlink. If I click on that, it will just open up this hyperlink, open the other page. Kind of a funny cartoon. Let's read it for a second. There's Calvin. He's sitting there in school. At this room, time enters a no passing zone. That was kind of funny. Hopefully you're not feeling that way as you're going through this. But if you want to clear the hyperlink, select the cell, go up to the clear hyperlink. Now the it's not there anymore. Let's see. That's gone. Oh, yeah, clear hyperlinks. If you the one below that, it seems like it does something. Remove hyperlinks, and you'll notice. Oh, so you'll notice this one is still the blue format. This one is now just turns it into a regular text field. Okay, that's hopefully all of that is clear. Now let's look at changing contents. I have this little exercise. You got a bunch of volunteers that are going to man a booth for 25 hours. I wrote a formula underneath. I put their names over to the side. Now, there's not a whole lot in here. See, we only have how many? We've got 7 people in there. If you're going to put the same thing over and over again, you can type it in, or you can leverage the fact that Excel is really good at multiplying your efforts. So I selected all of these cells that I want to put a value in there, and I'm going to put 3. Hit Control Enter, and everything is in there. I could do a formula in there equals 6 plus 2. Well, we know that's going to be 8. I'm just going to put that in there, and that same formula is populated all the way through. Because remember, cells will take numeric values, they'll take text, they'll take formulas, or an error. I can populate the whole thing with an error, but really, I'll just put in. Let's see, I'll put in 4. We'll see how that close. That gets me to 28. That means I probably want to drop a few hours here and there. And that'll get me to the target of 25. So if you there's only 7 cells, but if you're working with 350 cells, you don't want to put the same thing over and over again. You can just use this little trick. Select all the cells and put in some value, or you know what, 42. That's okay. You hit Control Enter. Now everything will have that. Now let's go back to. Well, let's try this. Oh, now we're off just a little bit. I can put a little more in one. Anyway, that's a little data entry thing. Let's look at our employees. Excel is really good at doing all sorts of calculations. I've got some employees. Oh, let's widen this a little bit. We have all these employees. They have different start times. Not too far off, but some of them are a little different. Their lunch break starts at different times and their shift ends. And Excel can compute the average shift start time, average lunch start and end, shift time. We have a column in here for the number of years that they've been employed. That's not quite populating correctly. We want to know the average number of years of experience that we have. How much human capital do we see among all these people? Well, we don't, it's not entered properly. It's entered as text. And so let's go back and fix these. That should be 5, 3, 2.5. So I'm going to 2 space half. And if you look at the formula bar, it treats it as a value of 2.5. It's formatted as a fraction. Either way, it's a great value. It'll do the calculation for you like that, like you want. 17, 9, 1, 8, 2, 5, 3, 2.5, 17, 9, 1, 8, 2, 5, 3, 2.5, 17. Now this will give you the appropriate average number of years of experience. Let's go for the very last part. Let's enter different value. Oh, you know what? I'll do my little shortcut. Select all these cells and I'll put in a number. Now they're all populated, but format each of these. First one, let's format it as a currency. And when I do a currency, I can indicate how many decimal points I want to have that. I can change the symbol. And so, for example, if there's Bitcoin, English, Hawaiian. Well, I don't know what the difference between Hawaiian dollars and regular dollars. That's okay. There's New Zealand dollars, Mapuche dollars, Mohawk, all these Scottish Gaelic pounds, English pounds. I don't know if those are different Welsh pounds, but either way, you can put whatever these symbols you want. Filipino peso. Hey, you got all these in here. Basque euros. Well, there's a lot of different types of euros, but you can put the appropriate currency that fits whatever you need. You're doing currency. I'll just do dollars. Accounting, format that. It's kind of like dollars, but they're a little bit different. And you'll notice the dollar is way over to the left. It's got space between that. If I put these two value, currency and accounting, if I put in a negative value, put negative 30 for both of them, you'll notice that the top one has negative, the minus sign before it. The accounting one has the parentheses. Some formats of accounting might make them red when they're negative. Let's make this one a date. Pick long date or short date. Can't see this. In mine, let's do this one. You can do it either there or up here. I'll do a short date on this one. Time, let's do 3 o'clock. Okay, it turned into a time. It's 3 a.m. Oh, let's make it p.m. No, 1500 hour, well, whatever. There's the time. So now it's formatted as, I'll do it up here. Time. There you go. It has hour, minute, second, percentage. If I format that 45 to a percentage, there we go. That 45 now turns into 4,500%. So let's make that 45% or whatever you want. A fraction, format cells. Let's make it to, that's not showing up. Fraction. So 45 isn't that interesting. But what happens if you do, for example, 0.125? Put that as a value and it's formatted as a fraction, it's 1/8. It'll round it, so that can be a little bit tricky. But if you have, but Excel will still work with fractions as much as you want. Let's turn this into scientific notation. So that's 4.5 times 10 to the 1, which is 45. Text. If I format this as text, and if you have a number formatted as text, you want to turn it to a number, the way I usually do this is I'll add a value to it because it'll kind of look at it and say, okay, I think you really made a number. So I'm adding a text, that value plus 0, and let's see. Oh, that still treats it as a text. So if I put that in there, it's not as a formula because it's text. What happens if I want to format this as a number? So sometimes it's kind of fun just to play around with these, see what it does. That converted to a number now. The 46. Okay, let's do a fun little exercise. Put your birth date in here. And then if you were to convert this to a long date, you'll see the day of the month, the day of the week that you were born. All right. So anyways, I hope this was illustrated, helping you get around with Excel a little bit better. And hope you have a great day. Well, thank you.